Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Sleight of Mind. Today, we're going to be talking about immigration. I'm actually an immigrant myself, and I'm guarantee you many of our parents on this call or grandparents on this call are immigrants too. I believe Jamie's an immigrant as well. Sandra, I'm not too sure whether you're an immigrant, but I'm sure your family is through the generations. So it's a very important topic that we want to talk about, especially with the light of obviously Brexit happening and all these communication complications with immigration that's going to be happening in England. And in general, I think immigration is a big topic that needs to be covered. So we're going to talk a little bit about it today. But I want to first kick off and just everyone to give their story about immigration in relation to their own family and their own personal sort of immigration brief history, if you could.
So mine started from I've been born and raised in the UK, so I can't officially say that I'm an immigrant. I've been there since literally birth, but mine started from my grandparents. And in a short and sweet way to sum it up, I think at the time when they came over to the UK from India, there was just a lot more opportunity. They found better growth, better opportunity for their families and sort of generations to come. And I mean, you guys could maybe speak of this a lot better than I could, but I think it's a big decision, man. It's quite difficult to kind of up and route everything to a completely new place, unfamiliar location. I mean, I know Baxter, I know you've had sort of first-hand experience with that sort of stuff. What's it like? What is it? Is it a big sort of step for you? And
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you do it. I think back in the day they had a way bigger um situation in their brain when they were looking at immigration. For me, it was easy. Maybe that's just because of my personality and the way I am, but I also believe that due to where we're at in this generation, technology wise, like affordability wise, travel wise, immigration is pretty easy. You try it out. If you don't like it, go back home. You know what I mean? You got communication. You can talk to anyone you want to at any time. So back in the day, or our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, maybe it wasn't so easy to have that immigration process because you had to write letters, you had to take boats rather than airplanes. There was no communication that was easily sent, even if it made it there. Money was scarce, these types of things. So, in my experience and our generation, I can't really say that it's a big hurdle.
no.
It really, I guess, depends where you are at emotionally and mentally to whether
Mm-hmm.
you can deal with it or not. That's really the only hurdles I see. Anything other than that, you can get over pretty quickly in this day and age, anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. I remember hearing like stories from my grandparents where even like flight availability, where you can take a flight to a certain location, but if you don't catch like the one flight a day, that's it, you missed your opportunity, and the next one's not going to happen for another few days and stuff. Which is like if you compare that to today's times, is insane. Like
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine what that's like, man. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Yep. Jamie, what about you, bro? What's
Yeah,
your
for me,
sort of
so I'm a first-hand immigrant in this country with an asterisk. So my dad is English. My dad's born and raised in England. He moved to the Caribbean, met my mother, who's born and raised on a tiny island called Antigua in the Caribbean. They had me in a tiny island called Anguilla, which is even smaller than Antigua. I spent the about a year in Anguilla, so I don't remember much about Anguilla at all. But I grew up in Antigua and St. Lucia. I consider myself Antiguan because my mum's Antiguan, and all my family in the Caribbean is Antiguan. And I spent a significant amount of time of my childhood in Antigua as well. England, I've had weird experiences with England from an early age. So I spent a couple of years in England when I was younger, and I remember being the only person of color in the whole school, like the whole school. There weren't Indian kids. There was no one. It was literally just me. Everyone was white but me, and it was weird. I was sort of on a whole, I was sort of celebrated. Like, hey, we got this kid from this other place, and like he's not from here. He's cool. He speaks different, and that part of it was great. But of course, with that always comes a bit of animosity, a bit of hate towards that sort of thing. And I remember experiencing that as well at a very young age. Not in the school, more so in the area that I lived in. So I lived in a place called Crawley in Sussex. And this is going into racism, I guess, but I remember being in shops with my mum, who's black. So she would be the only black woman you'd see in the whole town centre. It'd be just me and my mum, the only people of colour. And we'd go places. And I remember going to a shoe shop with her once, and she was trying some shoes on. And I hated shopping with my mum, but I loved going shoe shopping because there was always a chair. That meant there was a chair somewhere I could sit down and rest while she's doing her shopping. So she's doing her shopping in the shoe shop, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna sit on the seat and just chill for like 20 minutes, like sorted. There's a little girl, white girl, sat down, and generally, hand on heart, she put her hand on the seat next to her. She didn't want me to sit next to her. Yeah, she'd never seen anyone like me, but she just didn't want me to sit next to her. And the parents came over, looked at her, and as if they'd seen a ghost, picked her up and just walked off, stormed off. Didn't tell her off, nothing. Like, so that's probably my first experience of what it meant to be an immigrant, but also my first experience of being victim of racism as well. It's done me well being an immigrant. It's made me immensely proud of where I've come from and what I've been through. I went back to Antigua, did most of my secondary schooling over there, and then came back to the UK. So we moved back to this country as immigrants, like full-fledged immigrants. And it was a completely different life to what I had in Antigua. But very quickly it became normal life, and I had to adapt very quickly, and I had to just get used to the circumstances and deal with it. I had no choice. And it's only now at my sort of age now, I've got an English accent. There's mixed race people everywhere in England, you know, and I feel like the consensus is, I don't know why, but they just look at mixed race people and just think, oh, they're English, like they're from here, they've been here their whole life, they know what's going on. And so people now look at me as this, I'm an Englishman, I'm an English person, and they're very surprised to hear I'm not actually from here. So the interesting conversations you have with people about immigration and about, oh, they're coming across and stealing our jobs and this and that and benefits and all this sort of jobs and da 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 da, and I'm like, you have no idea where I've come from, man. Like, you have no clue. On the flip side, Baxter, I'm sure in Canada it's such a mixed place. Coming back's an eyelid. It's just like, hey, cool, you're from the UK. Like, let's learn more about you, and you're accepted. You're embraced in that sense. But in the UK, we don't have that. There's this sort of hatred almost to people from other places that come here and do well for themselves, and it's like, well, why?
Do you think that still exists today, or was that kind of the time in which you were growing up?
It's changing, but I still think it exists quite heavily. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I think it exists a lot towards Asians still. I think a lot needs to change, man. Like, a lot, and it's really disappointing for me where the country's at. So for when Brexit came around, and I feel like with Brexit, I don't know the economical and political decisions and the benefits and disadvantages of Brexit, right? In my head, where we were as a country was fine. We didn't need to change it, right? That's just my personal opinion. My other personal opinion is that I feel like the media, they use their newspapers, their websites to sort of create this image of that, like, immigrants are the cause of terrorism. I think they played on people's fears. Oh, another terrorist attack. This has happened. That's happened. It's the Muslims. It's the immigrants. It's this. It's that. But yeah, for me, I just think they preyed on people's ignorance, and they use that to get a lot of votes for Brexit. And Brexit isn't about that. and it should never be about that. The safety of this country is down to, if you look at the last 10 terrorist attacks, they've been committed by Brits. Forget what race they are. In fact, no, the London Bridge attacks, they were immigrants. But the last 10, bar that, have all been done by Brits. I also think immigration is probably one of the best things that's happened to this country, to the UK.
Yeah.
Go to London. London's amazing. There's so many mixed cultures in there now. You can go and experience a whole new culture you've never experienced in your life in your own country. What's so wrong about that? How fortunate we are to be alive in this moment in time on this like amazing, stunning planet is beyond me. Like, I can't comprehend the odds of that happening. And I just think, what a shame to restrict that to people based on their color or based on where they're born or based on this and their race, their creed, their religion. You can't come here because you're this color. You can't come here because you worship that person. Who gives a shit, man? Like, and that's the sad story. But places that do embrace immigration, so the UK over the last few years, we have embraced it really well, I think. Although there is still a long way to go in terms of accepting that as a whole, as a nation. It is great. I think America's great for that. And I don't think a lot of people realize the positive benefits of immigration that it has on their country.
If you look at culture, like being cultured as a person, that's always what I've said is my personal goal. And I believe we're put on this earth to be cultured, learn about our cultures and learn about the world. That's all we're here to do, right? We live on this planet for a reason. If we weren't living on this planet, we should be learning about the other planet we live on, but we live on this planet. So we should be learning all the different cultures, all the different people. And having immigration as a pathway is sort of like having, I want to call it a library in your country to learn these different cultures all in one place. Like being in London, being in the major cities like Toronto, New York, all of these big places, Australia, like Sydney, they guaranteed to have immigration. And even not just when it came back from Rome, I saw so many different cultures there as well. And it's a great way to have that library in your own country to experience these different things. Instead of having to go and fly out to all these different places to experience it, you can experience it in your own home country. It's just having that acceptance of it. And obviously my personal background is I've immigrated to Toronto, and Canada for me so far from all the places I've visited has been the country that's mostly accepted immigration. Like racism doesn't really happen here. You go to a house party, the whole world is in that place because everyone's mixed. You mixed Asian and black. You got like half Irish, half Indian. You got half Persian, half Chinese. These are the type of kids that are my age, our age, living. And I'm like, I didn't even know that kind of thing exists, right? That kind of mix, I didn't know they exist. But in Canada, it's a very multicultural place, and especially Toronto in general is like the most mixed city I've ever been. You guys know from being in England, pretty much most mixed race people are gonna be, well, I stereotype here, but it's kind of true, half Jamaican, half English. That's what I am. That's what most people are. When I came here and I'm telling people, yeah, I'm half English, half Jamaican, they're like shocked out of their mind. They're like, what do you mean? I didn't even know. Like, that's an insane mix. I'm like, what? I'm like, England, yeah, everyone there is like that. So you know what I mean? So they're very confused. And then the girl I was asking me, she was half Irish and half Japanese. I'm like, that's a crazy mix. You know what I mean? Like, how did your parents meet? And it's like they both came to Canada. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's where the link comes in. It's just a great place to see that. So I still obviously like to go to other countries and search for similar places, but by far this is the most accepted place for multiculturalism that I've seen.
One thing I found pretty crazy, and Baxter, you could probably relate. So a couple of years ago, V and Jamie were working out in the US. So I had the opportunity at that point to meet with a lot of local people in the US, and it surprised me so much at how many of them had never left America. And it was just like a lot of them didn't even have passports, because to travel domestically within the US, you don't need one. You just need a form of ID. And I thought that was insane. Like, I just feel like this, even if you're not planning to immigrate entirely, I think it's so important to travel and just expand your perspective and knowledge on the rest of the world. And I think even if your country is as big as America, you should be taking that opportunity.
Yep.
I
100% agree.
What I would say is with America, right? I'd like to know. Okay, so I think the number is 13% of Americans have a passport. I think that's the stat I last checked.
It's crazy low if that's true.
Yeah.
13% of Americans have a passport. Now, think of America. It has pretty much every single climate you can think of.
Yeah.
Snow, it's got tropics, it's got mild weather, it's got everything. It's got beaches, you can go skiing, it's got lakes, forest, jungle. Well, I don't know about jungle, it's got deserts, deserts, I'm thinking of food. It's got deserts.
Got desserts over there, bro.
They got desserts for sure, man. From countries. But like, they've got everything there. So I'd like to know, it'd be interesting to know, okay, of the rest of those Americans who don't have a passport, are they the type of people that just stay with, oh, I've never left my city, this is where I'm from, I ain't going anywhere? Or have they traveled around the States? So, okay, summers we go to Florida, winters we go to Aspen or wherever we go skiing here. Like, fair enough if you've traveled around America, because America has adopted influences from so many different countries. Louisiana has a massive French influence. California is very Mexican influenced. New York, Boston, for example, Irish. So there's different cultures within the country as well. As long as those people are traveling, I can understand if they stay within the United States because it's got everything and there's different cultures, different experiences that I get. It's if they're just like, I'm never leaving my town, I don't need to, I'm American, then that's when it's like, okay, come on now. Like,
yeah, I agree and disagree. So I agree that they have everything at their doorstep. And yeah, some Americans probably will just travel around America. But really and truly, the 51 or 52 states of Americas are really different countries anyway.
50.
Let's get real. They're just different countries. So because they call them states doesn't mean anything. They're really different countries. You go to another state, it acts completely differently. So that's fine, but they're still considered American. When you go to the Europe countries and like the Asian countries and the Australias, the South Americas, it's completely different. Like there's people that don't speak English. You know what I mean? In America, everyone's gonna speak English, regardless if you go to Cali, you go to the French state, they're gonna speak English. But it's still English influence. It's still an American state.
No. I completely.
It's semi-cultured, but they don't have the history. They don't have the architecture. They don't have like the original ways of how people actually do it in Asia and stuff like that. So I get why some people would stay, but to be honest, I guarantee you the ones that don't have a passport probably don't leave their state.
What would you say, like, for someone that has never moved or never really traveled outside of their own country? Do you have like a top thing or top 3 things that you think that they're missing out on by not experiencing the rest of the world?
My top 1 for me is this planet is beautiful. It's such a rare thing in this universe. And you have one life, you have one opportunity to see it all, to take it in. It's our planet, it's everyone's. And I believe it should be for everyone. I really don't think this planet should be restricted to certain people who are born in certain places or of certain colors or religions. I truly believe it is for everyone and it should be for everyone. And I just think they're missing out by not seeing that. And that's one of my goals in life, is to see as much as I can on this planet.
One of the big ones for me, like if I could probably sum it up, if I had to limit myself to just one thing, I think it would probably be perspective. And maybe that ties in a little bit with gratitude, because I think it's so easy to be where you've lived your entire life and have a certain way of thinking about something. Like you can complain about something, whether it be money or your home situation or your government or something like that. But until you see somebody else's real situation, and their government and their way of life and how they live, it gives you a lot of perspective on where you actually are. And like I said, for me, I was fortunate enough to be born in the UK, and I think just having that alone provides you with a lot more opportunity than people that have been born elsewhere in the world. And that's why I think, especially in my grandparents' generation, that's why a lot of people flock to the UK. But you only really gain that perspective when you see it with your own eyes. You can be told, you can be given stories, but it's never the same. Like, if you see a homeless person in the UK and you see a homeless person in a third world country, there's a massive difference. And gaining that perspective, I don't think someone can describe that to you through a story or something. Seeing it for yourself is completely different. And I don't think, for me, that's the biggest thing about travel. It gives me perspective on so many aspects about my life, in comparison to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think those two for me will be number one and number two. And number three would just be culture, just seeing how other humans live. Like, we're human beings, right? We're all human beings, no matter where you're from. But how different are we? That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Someone's culture or someone's way of living produces the type of human that they are. So if you want to try and be the best human you can be, then you got to learn all these different ways, or as many as you can. You know what I mean? To have a different perspective, to maybe enjoy the land a little bit more. These are the types of things that would be important to me. And I call that cultured, become cultured, not just in one, but in all, as a human being, not as an immigrant, not as a black person, a white person, not as a Muslim or Christian, just as a human being. That's what we all are, and just finding out how these other human beings are living their lifestyle and how their mindset is our key to having a love yourself.
Do you not think it's a bit crazy that there isn't a civilization or a culture on this planet that exists where they've gone everywhere and they sort of said, we're going to take the best bits of everything.
Yeah.
And so this is how life not should be lived, but this is how we think the best way to live life is.
Well, I think the idea of the best bits is very controversial. Like, what is the best bits? The best bit and the best bit to me can be very different. So I think a lot of countries will like to think they have their best bits, but somebody else is going to look at it and say, well,
that's
not
true.
That
so let me pose a question to you guys. If you was to say, would immigration be a possible next step for somebody? Would you suggest it as a new start, another way, another path? Would you suggest it as a next step in their life? What would you sort of say?
Yeah, I'd say depends on what you want to get from where you're going. I moved to the UK with my mum because it provided better opportunities for education and as a career. It would provide more opportunities for us. And while it was my legal right to move here, my mum immigrated here. She was an immigrant. And that's why most immigrants come to the UK, because it provides better opportunities. And I don't blame people who do that. Like, it's common sense. If you knew you could go somewhere and get a better opportunity for yourself or your family, then it's an actual viable option, you take it.
No one ever looks to try and move out of their own country. Like, you know what? Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Maybe I should go try live in Australia for 6 months. Maybe I should go try live in America for 6 months, or UK or Canada or Asia or Spain, No one ever thinks about, what if I immigrated right now? Would my life be better? Would it be worse? People go on holiday, yes, and they're like, oh, this is great. It's the holiday life, but now I got to go back to reality. What if that holiday life could be your full-time life? You know what I mean? People don't have that mindset, which is what puzzles me. You know what I mean? I'm going to position myself in the best that I can for my future and my prosperity. Whereas people don't look as the place that they live as maybe their downfall. You know what I mean? Your skill in England, I don't know, let's just say, for example, being a street sweeper in England doesn't really pay too much and it's not very good. You're not very wealthy. But in a different country, street sweepers are the most highly paid people in that country. Would you move there? My one piece of advice would be to look at your possibilities. Don't ever think, oh, nah, I can't do that. You know how easy it is to immigrate to another country or even try it out for a bit. If you have a British passport, very easy. If you have a American passport, very easy. Canadian. These are the type of passports that can be very easy. In other countries, there may be some hurdles in the way, but trust me, it's very easy. People put a load of hurdles in front of their pathway just because, oh, I can't afford it, I can't do this, I can't do that. You don't know until you try. You know what I mean? You only live.
Fear the unknown, though, don't they?
Exactly. That's what I want them to get rid out of. So
One thing that I'll throw out there, which was a big one for me, like I mean, I'm not the most well-traveled person in the world, but I do like to get around wherever I can. One thing which I try and keep in mind when I travel a lot now is to try and separate holidays from actually seeing somewhere, because I think when you go somewhere on a holiday, you don't necessarily see what real life is like there. You just see it from a tourist perspective, which when you're living out of a hotel and these type of things, it's not necessarily indicative of what real life would be out there if you were to live.
I mean, you're in Australia right now.
Yeah.
How has it been? How have you separated the holiday sort of thought process to make it like, well, let's live life here?
A big one for us, and this kind of goes back to even like what Jamie mentioned at the start in terms of technology and where we are in times. Like before, when you would travel, you would either stay, I guess, with like friends or family or in a hotel. Nowadays, like we're staying in an Airbnb, you're staying in an apartment, like which is pretty much what people do like on a day-to-day basis. We're surrounded by people that genuinely live and work here full time. And I think just taking you out of that hotel environment, it doesn't make it feel like a holiday so much. It feels like this is life.
yeah, you can even do. I know there's certain programs or experiences now where you can actually live in with families too. You know, you don't have to get your own separate. Obviously, you have to have the confidence of a solo traveler, or even if you're traveling with your partner, confidence to go ahead and do that. But you'll work with the family, you'll stay with them, you'll cook with them, all this stuff. That's like real culture, which I think is amazing. And those opportunities are available to us now. Back in the day, they weren't. So yeah, definitely. If you're thinking about it on the fence, take that leap. All right. So is there any finishing tips that you would give to someone that's number one, maybe thinking about immigrating, and then number two, to someone that maybe dislikes immigrants coming to their country? What would your sort of feedback be on those two people?
I'm going to go very Tim Ferriss here. I'm going to say try mini retirement. Do something like what Sandra's done. Sandra, you're in Oz for a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're abroad for about 6 weeks in total, but Australia for 5 weeks will be here.
Get yourself into the country that you'd like to emigrate to, and maybe spend a month there if you can at first, if you can afford it. But get yourself out of that holiday situation. Rent the Airbnbs, stay with families, speak to locals. If you go to a bar, don't go and gravitate to the person who's English and then start speaking to them. Find the local and try and communicate with them. Make the effort to communicate with the local people there. And you're just crossing that first barrier. And once you get past that, I think things will become a little bit easier. But just make the effort. Just jump on a plane, go somewhere new, try it out, test drive it, and then go from there. But yeah, don't go to Thailand and then go to a bar where there's all Brits there. Go somewhere and meet some Thai people and do some Thai cultured stuff and whatnot. On the flip side, on the other question, people who are against immigration, what I would suggest is, well, don't go on holiday. If you're a person that goes on holiday to Spain and Greece and all these countries, and you're against immigrants, stop traveling then. Stay in your own country and holiday in your own country. If you're that supportive and that passionate about your country, support the economy and stay there. Don't give money to other economies because you're being a hypocrite. Or you can go to more countries and see what you can learn from these other places. If you're worried about Asians coming to your country, go to Asia and see what it's like and understand what they're going through or what life choices they have to make for them to come here. Go to Syria. If you're against Syrians coming to this country, if you're brave enough, go to Syria and spend a week there and see if you last. If you don't like Africans coming to your country, go to Africa and figure out what's going on in Africa. All right, and put the shoe on your foot instead. That's what I'd suggest.
Oh, and Sanj?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with the two of those points. For me, I think it really comes down to just having an open mindset, being willing to learn from other environments, other people, other cultures. And I think for someone that doesn't want to travel or is against immigrants, probably has a closed mindset, in which case you're not opening yourself up to the world of possibilities of growth in so many different aspects of your life. So I think just being a little bit more open-minded could probably serve a lot of people well.
Oh man, my points on that would be yeah, same. Like, get traveled, man. If you're thinking about immigration, stop thinking about it. Just do it. Get yourself prepared. Think about always asking this question: what's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna buy a ticket home, and you go back to the life that you had before. So just get on the case and get it done. For people that are sort of against immigration into their own country, Jamie said it best: put the shoe on the other foot, and or your own foot, shall I say, and think about where they're coming from. Think about how they're actually bettering your economy by coming here, um, and making the place that you live a more cultured place. So don't always think about the bad side and jump on the bandwagon. Go and experience it yourself, and then sort of be more open-minded. And I think Trevor Noah did say it best. If no one's seen it, check out Trevor Noah. He has a joke about the British Empire. So this is mainly for British people. Is we went around and conquered the world and said, this is our empire, this is our empire. And then we named ourselves Great Britain. Well, what do you think the people in other countries said? They're like, oh, let me go and try and find out why Britain is so great. So then they came to Britain, and now the Britons are moaning about it. So
Yeah,
that's a prime example of
100%.
how it works. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and they're like, well, if you're so great, let me go find out why. So Britain brought it upon themselves. Too bad, so sad. But yeah, other than that, guys, please leave comments below about if you are looking to immigrate, where you want to immigrate to. Is there places that you found were really great to try out and you got some culture from? We like to hear any thoughts and comments in the below section. And this is another session of Sleight of Mind. So we'll see you next week.